So when I was only a couple of years into playing guitar, late beginner, early intermediate stage, there were a couple of really big problems that were holding me back from playing good guitar solos. Now, 25 years later, I get a lot of questions on YouTube and Instagram from other guitar players who want to know what's wrong with their solo playing because they can't progress. And having gone through all this myself, I can pretty much tell you there are three super common problems almost all guitar players have when they're trying to play good guitar solos. And today I'm going to show you exactly how you can tackle them head on. So if your solos stink, don't worry, so did mine. And I'm going to help you fix that. Let's go. So the number one problem that almost all guitar players face when they're trying to play guitar solos is they're unable to play something melodically interesting. Everybody can play a little bit of the pentatonic scale, right? But after a while, that just gets very, very boring, and guitar players ask themselves, well, how can I play something that's more melodically interesting? And the problem usually comes from limited knowledge of modes and scales. But the problem often is much smaller than you think, because let me show you something that will get you out of your rut quickly. Right now we're in A, and we have this backing track that we're soloing over, which is A, G, and F. So we're in A minor pretty much. So when we're using the minor pentatonic scale in A, everybody knows this, right? It's... Then we're limiting ourselves just a little bit, but you can add just one note to make it a lot more melodically interesting. And that is if you're adding the minor second. So instead of playing, you would play. So you're basically adding this note right here, which is your B, and you're adding it one octave higher here as well. So you're basically playing two more notes in the same minor pentatonic scale shape, and you're already sounding a lot more interesting. Let me show you. Let's just start with minor pentatonic first here. Let's add that new note. See, just adding one note to your very well-known minor pentatonic scale already makes that scale a lot more melodic. And just with adding one note, you have so much more vocabulary you can use to play something that is melodically interesting. If you're interested in learning more of these kinds of melodic licks around the minor pentatonic scale and how you can use them all over the fretboard and how you can become a more melodically interesting player, check out my guitar course in the description down below. It's called the Melodic Soloing Guitar Course. Right now, it's 20% off, so if you want to go deeper on that exact problem, check it out. So now that we fixed that, let's just move on to problem number 2 that most guitar players have when they're trying to play good guitar solos, and that is being stuck in pentatonic jail. What do I mean by that? I mean if you're stuck in just one pentatonic box. Let's get back to our A minor pentatonic box here. most people get stuck here and actually never leave that jail. But there's so many adjacent notes that are also part of the pentatonic scale, just in another pentatonic box, another part of the fretboard. Instead of learning all other pentatonic boxes on the fretboard from scratch, let's just focus on a couple notes that are adjacent boxes to the one that we already know. So here's our pentatonic box. That's pentatonic box 1 in A minor. And instead of learning all that stuff, we're just going to go with adjacent notes. So we're going to use the upper strings here. And we're just going to move to the next box, which is this one. And that's all we're going to do for this exercise. We're going to stay with that pentatonic box. But we're adding the to that, just to show you how easy it is to get more dynamic range out of your solos without learning all these new box shapes. Why? Because they contain 2 new bends that we wouldn't have otherwise. Our good bends in this shape, in this known shape, are this one and this one. You could argue this one too. And that would be fine. But if we're actually extending that pentatonic shape by just these 2 notes, we get 2 very cool bends. We get a minor bend and we get this bend up here. And you're going to be a much better solo player just by adding these couple notes. Let me show you with the backing track. So what you heard there at the end was actually a double bend I did on the B string in the 10th fret. Basically imitating the from the first problem that I showed you about melodic soloing. If you're interested in going deeper on this one, I have a course for that too. It's called the Power Pentatonics Guitar Course, and it deals with accessing the pentatonic scale all over the fretboard. And it shows you more than 30 different licks, how you can move from one pentatonic box into the next all over the fretboard. So check that out in the description below. Now, the third and final problem most guitar players face when they're trying to play guitar solos is guitar players don't play with enough confidence. In fact, when I watch a lot of guitar players who are in the intermediate stage, you can see it in their eyes. They're not confident playing. They're just trying to not make any mistake. And that is unfortunately something that you can easily hear in somebody's playing, and it just doesn't sound convincing. And you can actually prepare for that. It's hard to work on your, personal confidence. That's, maybe a lifelong goal, but you can definitely work on your confidence regarding guitar solos by planning them a little bit or just preparing for a certain spot. Have you ever asked yourself the question, how do you start a guitar solo? What's the note you're actually playing? What is going to be your first move? This is something you absolutely need to do. And if you do it and if you execute that, it's actually building your confidence as you solo. So let's just say we're going to choose the safest option that we can do to start a guitar solo, and that is start with the root note, right? The root note always sounds right in a song, and playing the root note is always safe, so nothing can go wrong. So let's just make this our mantra for now. When we're starting a guitar solo, we're starting with the root, and because we're playing a solo, we're starting with a bend to the root. So what happens when the solo comes up? I know exactly what to do. 3, 4. See how that first lick came across totally confident, even though I was, improvising the back part of it? It was because I knew what I was going to start with. And that's what you need to do when a solo comes up. It definitely boosts your confidence. It gets you in the right rhythm and the right groove within the solo. And the rest of the solo, you're going to play with a lot more confidence. Now let's build upon this concept a little bit more. Let's just say we're not only starting with a bend to the root, we're always playing a bend up to the root note whenever there's the root chord and the backing track. So whenever there's an A, we're going to play a bend up to the root, because that way you're structuring a solo a little bit around certain cornerstones, and that definitely boosts your confidence. Let's just try this. So at the end, I actually bend up a couple notes that weren't root notes, but I always did a bend whenever the A chord came up in the backing track. And that gives you a certain structure, and revolving around that structure and putting in notes in between actually makes playing a solo much, much easier. And by the way, this concept is not only for beginners and intermediate players. There are pro players like Joe Bonamassa who have certain go-to starting points for their solos. And that may not be due to his lack of confidence, not anymore at his stage of playing, but it might have started out as that. If you actually listen and study his playing, just as an example, there are other players too, Richie Kotzen, for instance, they have certain go-to starting points for their solo, probably just to get into the groove, get a feel for what is going to be the solo, and just so they have a solid starting point. So don't be ashamed to do that. All the players do it, even the pros. And those are pretty much the three most common problems all guitar players face. If you're facing one of these problems, let me know in the comments and let me know what you're currently doing about it. Check out my guitar courses in the description down below. They go way deeper than this video ever could, and they help you solve these exact problems with your soloing. I've been Joey, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.